to go into what does this mean for the Brian Laundrie family. Pulling up for you a statement from the family attorney where he said, quote, Gabby Petito's death at such a young age is a tragedy. While Brian Laundrie is currently charged with the unauthorized use of a debit card belonging to Gabby, Brian is only considered a person of interest in relation to Gabby Petito's demise. At this time, Brian is still missing, and when he is located, we will address the pending fraud charge against him. So I'm going to bring on Vinoo Varghese. He is a criminal defense attorney. Vinoo, after reading that statement, what were your thoughts?
The statement, after reading it, I'm thinking to myself, he could do a better job of making his client look a little more innocent, instead of using the word person of interest. He did one good thing and bring it back to what he was actually charged with. But I think he's got to say some more stuff, which is, look, Brian Laundrie didn't do this. He's innocent. He's presumed innocent. He hasn't been charged. So talking about the fact that he hasn't been charged with homicide is a good thing, but he hasn't been charged. And please, let's not rush to judgment. That's what I was thinking he should say. He said maybe 1/10 of that.
Vinoo, do you think that we're going to be hearing from them a lot more now with this final autopsy finally being revealed? We've been waiting on these results for a long time now. We just heard from that forensic pathologist saying he was surprised how long this all took. So is there going to be more that comes out from the Laundrie family because of this?
Possibly, but there isn't that much he needs to say, except that he should be saying that, please remember that our client is presumed innocent, and that's how he should be viewed. That's basically what he should be saying. Now, he's got to start fighting this battle in the court of public opinion, because assuming that Brian Laundrie comes back and is brought to justice, that he's not dead somewhere or he hasn't fled to a non-extradition country, then he's got to be presenting Brian Laundrie in the court. He's got to be protecting him in the court of public opinion, because almost everyone in this country and people around the world have heard about this case. It's captured the attention of millions all over. Certainly the jury pool, wherever it may be, ultimately if the homicide occurred in Wyoming, that the case is going to be there if he's charged with murder. So he's got to already be putting out defensive an armament around the court of public opinion. In other words, he's got to do what's called vaccination, right? I'm going to use that term. He's got to prepare prospective jurors and in essence, sterilize them, immunize them from the attacks that are going to come. Because once Laundrie is arrested and charged for murder, it's going to appear to be an open and shut case. So he's got to put things out there in the court of public opinion to give his client a chance if he's ultimately brought to justice.
Vinoo,
or charged. Maybe
sure.
Not brought to justice, but charged.
One thing that I was kind of surprised by in that last interview, they were talking about the possibility of DNA being linked back to Brian Laundrie, but they said they wouldn't be surprised by that. All these forensic pathologists, all these medical examiners, they're saying they were around each other. So that doesn't necessarily mean that he was the one who committed the crime. So what are your thoughts on how they're going to be researching that DNA and utilizing that in the future cases?
Well, I think you just gave Brian Laundrie a potential defense if he's charged. And I think that's the kind of thing that his lawyer should be saying, making these kind of statements, instilling doubt into the public, right? He's not done that. He said very little, and really, I don't feel it's really helped him. And he's got an ethical obligation to protect the client in the court of public opinion, and he's not doing that. So what you just said, Daytona, is something that he should be saying. Look, regardless of what they found, yes, they were together at one point. Doesn't mean he killed her. Doesn't mean that he's the one who strangled her. There should have been a forceful statement. Yes, this is a tragedy. Someone strangled Gabby Petito, but it wasn't Brian Laundrie. And please, continue to maintain what our system is built on, which is the presumption of innocence. He's not doing that.
All right, and we're just being nitpicky at this because we really only have so much evidence, and we don't even have the guy that everyone is looking for at this time, Brian Laundrie, right there in the new video that was released by Utah police. Gabby talks about how Brian was touching her and said that he grabbed her around her neck. What type of evidence could that be in the future? You can see her signaling to her face, grabbed her around her face and scratched her. Could this possibly be used against him in the future if he ends up coming back?
It's a great question. And I think certainly law enforcement would like to use that against him. But, the evidence laws are such that these aren't the kind of things that will come in under evidentiary rules. So it doesn't appear that statement comes in because there's something called a dying declaration. So if there was a video of her right before she was killed saying Brian did it, then that would come in. But that's not what this is. In fact, it's his lawyer would argue, if I were his lawyer, certainly the prosecution is going to try to get this in. And argue that this is far more prejudicial than probative. That's the legal standard, that the value of it is so minor compared to the negative impact it would have on Brian Laundrie's defense. Because they got into an argument doesn't mean, or they got into a fight, that doesn't mean that he's the one who ultimately killed her. I mean, look, there's a theory going on around the internet that, this guy didn't kill her. He was so sick of her that he just left her and to fend for herself, and somebody else did this. And that is, that could bring along with it other charges, neglect and all that, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily homicide.
Right. But I mean, a huge development today in that it was strangulation, because you can't strangle yourself. Someone else has to do it. So there was two people involved in this altercation of sorts. Going over to the possible prosecution side with the with the Petito family, what do you think the steps are that their legal team is taking at this point?
Well, you and I have spoken a couple times about this. I think the prosecution has enough to charge him. The question is, do they have enough to convict him beyond a reasonable doubt? And they certainly, had enough to get a search warrant, to go into his house, get his clothing and other items. And for a lot of prosecutors, that's enough. They don't really care. They don't want, they're not interested in finding more. And certainly he left her. He went back to Florida with her car. There is enough there to charge him, besides the credit card, or the unlawful use of credit card, or whatever they charged him with. So that's enough there. But I imagine that the prosecution is looking for more. At a certain point, they may not have more, and they're gonna have to sit there and make a decision. Okay, look, we certainly have enough. He was with her. She's dead. She was strangled. He was the last one known to be with her. Therefore, it's reasonable to believe that he was the one who murdered her. I mean, I am a former prosecutor. You know how these guys think. And I think that will likely be enough. And eventually the public is going to be, the din, the noise, the clamoring is going to be so loud that they're going to have to charge him, particularly if they find him. And if they find him, and, I can tell you credit card fraud or theft will not be enough to satisfy what is become she's become a face of people who are longing to see this, Brian Laundrie get charged and ultimately be prosecuted, charged and convicted.
What happens if they don't find him?
Well, I think that they could potentially charge him in absentia. Is the term, but I'm not sure they will do that, because there's a certain point. Well, they could do that, and then they could argue that he has voluntarily left the jurisdiction, and he has himself made himself unavailable to be found. Now that poses a problem from a PR perspective if he's found dead, and by some other means or whatever. But I think that they can do that. They may not want to do that. They can do that. These are the decisions that the state's attorney or district attorney in that county is going to have to weigh as to what they want to do. Because, as I said, I think the public is it's not going to be much longer where, and a lot of these prosecutors are at the state level they are elected. And so if there's an election campaign up around the corner, he's certainly going to be want to be the one that charged Brian Laundrie with murder, as opposed to be the one who didn't do anything, and that gives a platform for his opponent or her opponent to run on in a race, in local race. Now, if the feds want to come in, they could, but I don't see a federal charge here. They're certainly aiding in the investigation. If she was just murdered in Wyoming, the chances of a federal charge are slim, unless it was at a federal park, and then they could potentially charge him, the feds. But I think the feds would probably leave it if they don't have Laundrie and they don't have enough. The feds will probably leave it to the local district attorney.
Yeah, Vinoo, taking it one step further, if they don't have Brian Laundrie, what role would his parents be playing in all of this potentially?
His parents really legally have no role unless the authorities in Florida or the federal authorities, the FBI, want to charge them with some type of obstruction. So, for example, if they gave interviews to the FBI and it turns out that something they told the FBI was not true, they could be potentially charged with obstruction. But outside of that, it doesn't appear that they're going to have any role, unless there's some other additional evidence that somehow his parents or his father or mother or both were aided in his escape. So then there could be a potential charge there. But at this point, it seems that they're not going to be involved in any sort of charging. But
last question for you, Vinoo.
Who knows what will happen?
What are you going to be watching next? Because this was the next step. We were all waiting for the results of the final autopsy. What do you think is next?
Well, I think that they are going to, I know Dr. Baden, who was involved in the George Floyd case, I had written about his involvement in that case in a piece that I had written last year for the National Law Journal. I know that, he said he made a comment about the DNA and not being used and not such a big deal. But I think that they are going to wait for those results if they haven't had them yet for comparison. And that'll just be another thing that said, look, his DNA was on her. The argument that just because he was with her doesn't mean he killed her is the argument for his lawyer. And that's the argument his lawyer should have been making. And we talked about this when we started this. Yeah. But I think they're probably waiting on that. And once they have that, they're going to move to charge him.
All right, so potentially some charges coming soon.
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of time.
Okay, Vinoo Varghese, thank you so much for being on the show. Again, a criminal defense lawyer out in New York. We appreciate you staying up late with us.
My pleasure.
All right, we are